Hello and welcome to The Stack. This week we speak with the founder of global stationery brand Papier, plus the best of Atlantic Canada in Edit magazine, and a new publication on translated journalism. It's called Translator, of course. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show talking about a topic that I'm sure all Stack listeners care about, stationery. And this is something I want to cover more and more on the show, the value of beautiful diaries, pens, note cards, and etc. So it was a pleasure to welcome in our studio a man that knows a thing or two about stationery, Taymoor Atighetchi, founder of the successful global stationery brand Papier, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary. With record sales and an increasing presence in the US and plans to go to Europe, Taymoor tells us a bit more about Papier.
I am and have always been very interested in stationery, but a lot of the origins of it are more in my interest in physical products and physical objects and art and creativity. I come from a family of art dealers. My surname means art dealer in Persian. And so I've always been very interested in drawing, art, painting. And so for me, stationery was one of the few ways in which the everyday person remains creative, through writing in particular. So that was really what inspired me to think about this category more broadly and how to bring this category to the modern consumer.
That's fantastic. And it's interesting what you mentioned about the analog, because we see this with vinyl. But to be honest, with stationery, I don't feel it ever went away. Of course, we have our mobiles. We might write down some notes here and there. But it's not the same as pen and paper, is it?
No, it's not. And I think there's obviously, as more and more digital enters our lives, people do talk about what's the future of writing, what's the future of all of this. And actually, I feel very strongly that it's akin to walking and swimming and talking. You know, no one ever talks about whether one day we'll, when the car came out, people didn't say, are we going to forget how to walk? In the same way, I really don't believe that writing is going to be at all under threat. And the nice thing as we come into a decade is the trends are really showing that. And people are adopting writing again. Having had a decade of tablets and e-readers and iPhones and all the rest of it, we're seeing really great evidence that people are starting to realize that actually there are benefits to putting pen to paper. You yourself use it. I do too. We remember things better when we write. We pay more attention when we write. We're not distracted. So I think quite the contrary, there's no threat of this going away. We're actually at the start of a big growth in the analog revolution in some ways.
And across all ages as well. Of course, this is just what I observe, but even young people, like younger than 18 years old, I see this massively.
Absolutely. It's actually being very much spearheaded by the youngest generation. And again, it's one of the biggest myths. When people talk to me about Papier and my business, one of the biggest misconceptions is you must be selling notebooks and note cards to people who can't use their phone or can't use email or kind of, and it's actually the exact opposite. If you look at data around things like e-readers, so Kindle being a very good example, the biggest adopters of that product are actually the boomer generation. So people now in their kind of 50s and 60s. And as you go younger and younger and younger, the adoption is much more around analog products. So you see it in novels at the moment. And, Barnes & Noble, large bookstore that we're stocked in, is growing the number of stores they've got at the moment. And it's driven by young people. And again, like you say, younger students and people are wanting to write more rather than put everything down on their phones.
You mentioned Barnes & Noble, but I was reading about the places where you can find Papier products. There's so many of them. What a success story. I mean, and I didn't know that, of course, it's a British brand, but your market in the US is booming.
The majority of our sales are now in the US. And
that was not always the case, right?
No,
First you started quite local.
Absolutely. When the brand was born in Soho in London. And that's very much, and we still very much have a very London heritage. And a lot of the 10th birthday celebration, we have an entire collection coming out, which is just celebrating this wonderful city that we were born in. But we only a few years ago launched into the US market and very quickly saw the amazing response from the community of customers we had originally there. And ever since that's grown. So we're now in over 4,000 stores across the UK and the US, the majority of which are in the US now.
Are there any big difference to the US market compared to the British one?
I actually think what's interesting is how much there is in common between the market. There are some, very specific differences around style and, but even actually interestingly between the coasts, you've got the kind of East Coast style, which can feel very European in some respects. And then you've kind of got more of the Central American Midwestern style, which can feel quite preppy. So in some ways it reflects fashion. But what's more interesting, in my opinion, has always been that stationery almost acts as a kind of equalizer across nations and across people because it's so rooted in how we think and feel. So, our product in the size that we have it is the bestseller here as it is in the US as well. So there are some, I guess you could say, fashion differences, but at the heart, paper people, as we call them, are kind of very universal.
And I think I don't know, how can I call this, but your innovation team in terms of design, they must be very busy because if you look at if you go to the Papier website, there are a lot of different kind of prints, different kind of themes as well. I particularly like your note cards with the dogs. There's a collection there.
Yes.
That's the one I'm keeping my eye on, actually. So tell us about how you must have so many new launches every year, right?
We do. And one of the ways in which we wanted to bring this category to the modern consumer is bring it away from being a very traditional medium where, stationery, has always been associated with kind of very formal writing paper. But what we wanted to do when we launched was actually reflect the fact that stationery is an extension of people's creative self. And therefore, what you have on your notebook or on the top of your note card is actually very creative. So we have a very large collection of prints, designs, patterns that span across floral through to very modern, through to more classic, so reflecting all the different tastes of the individual. And we have, about a third of our business are creatives, and they are artists at work. I often ask people to come and visit us because it's not an office of people sitting down and typing and putting numbers into Excel. We have half the office is dedicated to people painting, and those artworks end up being what sits on your note cards or your notebooks.
Are you still in Soho? Or are you
We're not. We're actually in King's Cross. But as with all anniversaries comes a new dawn as well. And actually we felt that it was only natural that we move back into Soho. So we don't have any lease secured yet, but the plan very much is to move the brand and the team back to where it was born.
I'm happy because I live in Soho, so...
Very lucky, very jealous.
So when you said Soho, I was like, my eyes, and by the way, I found the name of the dog collection, Paws and Pros.
Yes,
well.
That's the one.
And let's talk about best-selling products. Are diaries your best-selling product, or maybe are there any surprises here and there?
Not really, no. Diaries or any kind of organizational stationery is the number one product for Papier. And it's the most common entry product into Papier. It's how people discover us. Maybe what's surprising within that is you've got obviously your calendar year diary that starts at the start of the calendar year. But one of our biggest products is the academic diary. And that starts at the start of a school year. So why I love this product and why I think it's so fascinating is for the reason we spoke about earlier, is this is a product bought by young students. And these are students now who have everything at their fingertips digitally, phones, laptops, everything. But they are choosing to purchase and use a physical analog academic product to write not just their diary, but their ambitions in terms of what subjects they want to read, etc. So I love that product because it really is showing how much is being driven by younger consumers at the moment.
When are you starting to sell the 2026 diaries? Sometime soon, right? I presume.
It's a good question. It gets earlier every year because every year
it's like Christmas comes early every year.
And we get customers asking for it even earlier to start. So typically it's around September time where people will start to be putting in their dates for the following year, really.
Amazing. Well, I'll definitely keep an eye. The 2025, of course, they're all sold out. And Taymoor, okay, we have the US, we have the UK. Any other markets that you plan to conquer?
So we are currently also in Australia, which is a fantastic market for us. And so we are available in all English-speaking territories. But for us, next year is an important launch where we, for the first time, will take the brand into Europe. And in a funny way, obviously, we are born in London, but our brand name is very European. Papier is obviously French for paper. It's also German for paper too. So it has a real European heritage to it too. So we're excited to be able to launch the brand into Europe next year.
And it's interesting because you're entering this market as a brand that is already you have already 10 years. This amazing market. So
That's right.
You're going to be a strong player from the start.
Well, we have our fair few fans, and I myself am always looking at comments on our own social media posts, and I always see prospective customers or fans in Italy, Spain, France posting, when are you launching? When can we be able to buy your product? So I'm pleased that we can finally bring the brand to the market. One
thing that I'm curious about sales, of course, there are many places where people can actually buy your products, and I believe you can buy it online as well. How do you see that division? I mean, do you think it's split or there's less online? What can you say about it?
So the brand was born online as a direct-to-consumer, digital first place to buy. And it was only 2 years ago that we actually started to sell the product in physical locations and stores. So in 2 years, we've scaled to 4,000 stores. But the vast majority of our product is still bought online. The reason we brought the product to stores is partly because stationery is something that you also sometimes need to pick up on the go. You might be in a store purchasing gifts. You might be on the way to a meeting. You might be traveling and you want a perfect notebook for the flight. And we were often hearing feedback from customers saying they love us, but it was last minute and they couldn't wait a few days for that product. So what we see is having online and offline as being very complementary, because it really is about what the need is at that point. Are you in a rush? Are you in a store doing some other purchasing as well?
I am that customer because I go to Selfridges, which is 5 minutes from the office, and I like to try my pens as
Absolutely.
well.
And that's another reason. There's a real tactility with paper, and people want to feel how that paper looks and feels like. And Selfridges is a good example where we have one of our notebooks out so people can try the different pens on it.
And finally, Taymoor, I mean, so many good news from Papier. So what can we look forward, for the Christmas season? As you know, there is a very busy season. The diaries are coming out very soon as well. What else can you tell us?
So as with any holiday season, there'll be a whole new range of designs and prints. This season, we're particularly inspired by the kind of Italian festive season. So expect to see lots of food. Some
panettones.
Absolutely. And also what we also love to do is introduce new products and categories that we think are very complementary to these products. And so we always will have the now quite famous Papier Advent calendar, which is a 24-day calendar, and every drawer has a new piece of stationery, and it's sold out every year we've launched it. And for the first time this year, we're also going to be launching a small but very nicely curated set of games too, because one thing we love to see is not only are our customers wanting to write and read and journal, but when they're sitting down and not on their phones, they also want to play games like puzzles and card games and the rest of it. So we're going to have a small collection, limited edition collection of games as well this year, which is perfect for holidays.
Thank you, Taymoor Atighetchi there, founder of Papier. To look at their beautiful products, go to papier.com. Translated magazine journalism isn't a new idea, but English language publications don't often match the quality of Italy's Internazionale and the French Courrier International. Now, the new magazine Translator hopes to change that. It was a pleasure to welcome to our studio Charles Emmerson, editor of Translator, to tell us about some of the highlights in the first issue, which ranges from penguinicide in Patagonia to exploring President Donald Trump's executive order to make English the official language of the US.
Our magazine is called Translator, and we went through various other notions of what the title might be, but we've finally settled on this, and it really does what it says on the tin. So what we do is we translate reportage from around the world into English, so that those who speak English and not other languages can benefit from the wonderful writing which is taking place all the time all around the world.
It does expand the mind, right? This idea, it kind of takes you out of your comfort zone and you discover like new views from different countries as well. I think that was the intention, right, of the whole thing.
Absolutely. We want to really change our collective frames of reference if we can. I mean, there's wonderful writing in English, of course, which exists now, but it does make a difference if you go and see what's actually being read in, say, Argentina or in Brazil or in Singapore or in other parts of the world. And there is, of course, this is a very difficult time for global journalism. There's many crises, political crises, business models are under threat. We feel this is a way of trying to platform some of the excellent writing which is taking place around the world. And also, as I said, really give a different frame of reference for readers.
And Charles, is this your first magazine? I know you're a historian, you published a few books as well, great books, but tell us, what was your relationship with magazines before Translator?
Well, I mean, I've been reading magazines since I was, of course,
That's a good start.
A child.
Yeah.
I start off as a reader. This is my first foray into actual publishing. Although, as you know, Fernando, the independent publishing world is a wonderfully friendly world. And when people have asked me, why are you setting up a new magazine? And I explain, and they say, well, you're kind of crazy, but how can I help? And I feel that's very much the vibe in the independent publishing world. I've always been writing, of course, also because I've worked in think tanks and I've written several books. But I did feel that there was something missing in the newspaper and the magazine scene. If you go to France, for example, they have Courrier International. In Italy, they have Internazionale. So these wonderful publications which translate from around the world. And I felt this was something that was really needed, actually, at this moment in time. But we also wanted to make it fun and approachable. That's why you see the design is very colorful and, to make the reading experience a pleasurable one.
And it's funny you mentioned Internazionale, which is a great title from Italy, because I think we needed something like this for the English language as well. Because, I wouldn't say arrogance, but of course everyone speaks English in the world, right? So maybe it's interesting as well for people from English-speaking countries to actually discover things from other languages and other kind of articles.
Absolutely. And in a way, it's kind of bizarre. It doesn't exist already. One of the things I was asking myself over the last couple of years as this idea was circulating and I was speaking to people is, why doesn't it exist? And we could find several reasons why it might not have been done before. And one might simply be that there is so much writing in English. But we thought, therefore, we just had to do it ultimately. And so that's what we did.
How did you gather your team as well? Because, of course, you need some kind of expertise to know what should be translated or not. You have to perhaps to trust as well the people that have those insights. So tell us a bit more about how did you create the translator team in a way?
Well, we've had a wonderful group of co-conspirators, people that I've been speaking to from the start, who've been able to help in various ways with the project. But really the core of it is our core team in London, and there are 5 of us, including me. And it's a very multilingual and very multi-talented team. So they can help us find pieces that we should translate. Then we've got a wonderful group of contributing editors who speak a wider group of languages, and they're also contributing of their time and energy and their recommendations. What we really hope to do ultimately is that readers of the magazine who speak languages other than English will themselves recommend pieces that we can either summarize for our weekly dispatches, which are online, or translate for future issues of the magazine in full. And that way we can create this kind of circular economy, a positive circular economy of multilingualism.
Those dispatches is where all started, right? Kind of the concept and everything.
Yeah, we wanted to sort of experiment a little bit to see how this would work. It was a way also of us reading ourselves more broadly into the world. And so, yes, for the last, 3 months now, we've been summarizing 3 or 4 pieces that have caught our eye from around the world and just putting them out online on a Substack. But we always had in mind the magazine. We're great believers in paper In printing, we believe that that's how you create loyalty. And we also believe that's how you create a positive and pleasurable reading experience, which we very much hope we've achieved.
And the magazine looks beautiful as well. I know Jeremy, our friend Jeremy here, he's involved as well with the design of the title. That's brilliant.
Yes, we've been working with Mag Culture, which is, I always like to say, it's not only the best magazine shop in the world that I've been to, but it's also a very wonderful design team. And Jeremy Leslie has been wonderfully helpful on all kinds of things. We also work with Osman Bari, who's a wonderful Canadian designer. So we've been really blessed on that. And also we've worked with a number of different illustrators. So each of the translated reportage pieces, we've paired the writer with a translator, but also with an illustrator, so that we really have, each piece has this multi-layered relationship between text, translation, and image.
And give us a taster, perhaps, of some of the stories, not everything, but some of the stories that we'll be able to read on issue 1.
Well, my absolute favorite story is called Massacre of the Penguins, which is about penguinicide. It's about an environmental crime which took place in Patagonia a few years ago. It's a sad story. It's a story of a man who, for various reasons, frustrations, etc., decides to take out his bulldozer one day into this beautiful area of Patagonia where penguins come every year as part of their mating season. And he basically destroys a large number of these nests. And this has been a starting point for thinking about how environmental crimes should be thought of in Argentina and indeed around the world, the notion of ecocide. So it has this serious side to it, but the article is written in such a beautiful, beautiful way for Gato Pardo, which is a Mexico City-based publication.
Good publications in there,
Great publications.
Also been on the stack before, so very good publications.
And it's one of the really wonderful things about speaking to all these wonderful magazines is that generally they're driven by the same kind of energy and desire that we are, really. So when we speak to, for example, Gato Pardo, or there's another piece which comes from Racif 22, which is an Arabic language media outlet based in Beirut, we found basically they want to help. They're a little bit intrigued about who is this new publication that wants to translate their work. But that skepticism soon evaporates when we get to talking about the articles and why we're doing what we're doing.
And if I may ask, Charles, what about the translation itself? Of course, I have to ask you this about, there's a lot of talks about AI doing that, but what's your process? I mean, do you have something that you do with every single article, for example?
Well, we don't use artificial intelligence for the translation of the articles, of course. And in fact, we find that AI is as in many things, AI is hugely disruptive of current business, economic models, cultural models of value.
Agreed.
But it's not able to translate articles in a way that reads well in English at all, really. And of course, AI is a bullshit artist, so let's be honest about that. But what we do is we seek translators who we think we can pair with these articles, who we think will translate them well, mostly literary translators. But what we're also very, very keen to do is for translators to come to us. If there are translators who come across pieces that they think are very interesting, long-form journalism pieces of reportage, then, recommend them to us, pitch to us. Because, of course, we think that's a good way of finding articles, but it's also a way of giving back also to the translation community, which feels rather under pressure at this moment in time.
And, it is an incredibly tough job as well. You need to be very precise. It is time consuming. So in a way, this magazine is a tribute to all those people as well, right?
It's absolutely a tribute to translation and translation as a craft. And it's very interesting to me that in the literary world, in terms of fiction, for example, we see that translated fiction is really highly valued, much more highly valued now than 20 or 30 years ago, in terms of prizes, in terms of equal standing for translators and authors. Obviously, Fitzcarraldo Editions, Tilted Axis, these very successful publishing houses, which have really made their business on translation. And younger readers love reading fiction in translation much more than their parents or their grandparents. So that exists in fiction. And we want to do something similar in non-fiction and in long-form journalism, because we believe that sensibility is really there, and we want to respond to that.
I think it's a brilliant idea. Listen, the magazine has been out just for a few days now, but what's the plan for issue 2? How often will it come out? Where people can go if they're interested to find out a bit more?
Well, you can always go to our website, of course, where we're always increasing the number of outlets where the magazine is being sold. We're represented by Public Knowledge Books for distribution. You can go and find it in Tate Modern. We found out the other day.
My culture, maybe?
Yes, you could. Yeah, I think we might even have a display in my culture at the moment. So you can find it in lots of shops, but if there are people who'd like to stock it, then of course they should let us know. And in terms of the frequency of the magazine, we're going to do at least one more this year. And then what we're looking to do next year is to produce 6 over the course of the year. So 1 every 2 months. And we're really sort of getting into our stride now. And we think it's possible. And yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Well, and my final word, Charles, I think this was needed, actually, in the English market.
Well, thank you very much indeed. We're in strong agreement on that point. And we hope that it's needed and also enjoyable. And we want to combine those. We think often there can be something that's needed and essential, but we don't want it to be too po-faced, too serious. We also want it to lean into our love of language, our love of translation, as well as exploring all these worlds beyond the Anglosphere.
Thank you, Charles. And the second issue of Translator will be out later this year. The magazine was designed by London's Mag Culture, so of course you can buy a copy at their magazine shop or go to translatormag.co. We head to Canada now to speak to stack friend James Mullinger from the great publication Edit. And of course, James is also a successful stand-up comedian. Could he be the only editor-in-chief and stand-up comedian out there? It is always a pleasure catching up with James, who tells me about the new summer issue of Edit, which is a travel special with the best places to go in Atlantic Canada.
The world needs more Canada right now. I think it's amazing to be in and part of a country that people generally associate with positivity, kindness, that stereotype that Canadians are so friendly. What a lovely stereotype to have when you think about what other countries might be famous for, when you think about Canada's the second biggest country in the world. Look at the things that the biggest country in the world does. And then the fact that the second biggest country in the world chooses to just bring joy and friendliness to everyone. It's a stereotype that I think Canadians tried to, back away from for a while. But now it's like, oh no, actually, that is the thing that makes us great.
And issue 33, wow, that's wonderful. Of that, it's out now. And it's quite interesting because it's the inaugural kind of travel issue, which I think is fascinating. I thought you guys had done some sort of travel list before, but that's amazing because there's literally the places to go in Canada, especially in the area from the East Coast, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's a very good point. We've always covered travel stories, and we have in some ways, I guess some could argue, predominantly been, a travel magazine while also highlighting, entrepreneurs in the region, business leaders, philanthropists, creatives. But we decided that at this particular juncture where we are a magazine based 1 hour drive from the US border into Maine. There is a real, as you mentioned, spotlight on Canada right now. And there's, of course, troubles. I mean, without wanting to get too political, there are troubles in the world right now, of course, and lots of people are looking to come to Canada to support Canada. And we thought, well, why not devote an entire issue exclusively to travel? Of course, there's also a commercial aspect to this, whereby securing partnerships and advertising, it's very useful often to have key themed issues. But we decided that we noticed our subscriber base increasing in the state of Maine in the US and indeed across the US. There's a lot of Americans looking to Canada and saying, where can we come to show our partnership and our allegiance to our beautiful neighboring country? And so we thought, well, let's put together what we perceive to be the definitive guide to Atlantic Canada this year. Here are the places that you need to come. And of course, on the cover, we have a beautiful view of the Halifax waterfront, the stunning Queen's Mark development. And Halifax is, in my opinion, the best city in the world. It's also unquestionably one of the fastest growing cities in the world. I mean, the best way I can describe Halifax is that I loved it 10 years ago, but if you ask me to make a list now of my top 20 favorite things to do in Halifax, none of them were there 10 years ago. And that is just an incredible amount of growth to happen. So, yeah, it's been wonderfully received. And I think we're moving forward, going to be doing more themed issues. The next issue will be exclusively art and design. It's been a successful move for us to create these themed issues.
Well, and you just mentioned how much you love Halifax. There will be people moving there. And I say this because in your spring issue, so the one before the current one of your guests actually said that he moved to a specific place after listening to our interview here on the Stack. I was so proud.
Oh, me too, mate. Me too. Honestly, it was one of those things that, we know what we do, makes an impact, and we hope that we make a difference. But indeed, I received a message on LinkedIn a couple of years ago from Dmitry Minkov, who is the CEO and founder of a incredible global chocolate brand called Hello Chocolate. He finds the best craft chocolate from around the world, and he started his company in Singapore in 2015. He's a Ukrainian-born entrepreneur, and he was basically looking for a new place to set up shop, set up base. His beautiful wife and his daughter wanted to find a place for them to have a better quality of life. And he listened to us talking on the Stack a couple of years ago, heard me waxing lyrical about St. John, New Brunswick, how it was, Canada's next great Canadian city, what a wonderful place it was to have an incredible quality of life, both entrepreneurially and also creatively, and for your family. And he moved to the same small town as me, just outside St. John, called Rosse, New Brunswick. Beautiful small town, population 10,000 people. And the amazing thing is he has thrived here. And every time I see him, he's thanking me for that interview. So it was just such a wonderful thing. So in the last issue, we did a big interview with him and had him wax lyrical about his new life here. And of course, he gave multiple shouts outs and thanks to the Stack for changing his life. And anyone else listening who is looking to make a move to New Brunswick or indeed anywhere in Atlantic Canada, please reach out, because I would love to make it happen.
Or to Halifax as well,
exactly,
as you were saying there. So I remember last time we spoke, James, you were very proud because Edit was starting to be stocked in quite big kind of places in Canada. So how's the situation now? I mean, because of course our industry keeps evolving. There's good news, there's bad news, but what's the state of Edit right now? Since we spoke last time.
Yeah, excellent question. I mean, it would be wrong of me to describe the print magazine business as an easy one to be in. We all obviously do this because we absolutely love it, because we value print and we know the importance of it. And of course, when you get incredible feedback from readers and indeed people you've featured whose businesses have been enlivened by something that you've said about them, it makes it all worth it. But it definitely is tough. And so we do have different avenues and strategies that we use. So newsstand sales are steady, which, as we know in the print magazine business, right, steady is the new up. So we do continue to distribute nationally. We're on newsstands across Canada, subscribers around the world. And again, thankfully, the subscriber base in the States has risen dramatically in the past few months. But one of the other ways in which we have found our feet is we've been doing lots of custom publishing pieces, producing bespoke copies of the magazine for conferences and AGMs and award ceremonies. My other job, or my weirdly, this is the other way around for most people. My proper job is I'm a stand-up comedian. So the magazine job is the hobby, and of course I love both of them. But they tie together magically. Where, for example, I do a lot of keynote speeches and corporate clean stand-up performances at conferences around Canada, and we now have this offering where we say, okay, well, you've hired me to do this because you enjoy the magazine. Why not produce a bespoke issue whereby we can either create content for them or put their logos on the cover. Just next month, I'm doing the Egg Farmers of Canada have their national conference at the beautiful Algonquin Resort in St. Andrews by the Sea. So the Egg Farmers of New Brunswick have produced a bespoke copy where, again, it features a travel guide to the place we're going to be, my love letter to the place, a welcome from them. And similarly, New Brunswick, as I'm sure your listeners know, is proudly the only official bilingual province in Canada. So we created our first ever proudly bilingual edition that every single feature was about someone who is proudly bilingual in the province, describing how their industry, and it could be anyone from opera singer Misha Brugger-Gossman Lee or Paralympian Danielle Doris, and they're talking about their bilingualism, how it's been a benefit to them, celebrating it. And when we produce this as a bespoke piece in both English and French for the Secretariat for Official Languages, and this is being distributed right now. So that's definitely a way in which we've enhanced our distribution. And again, in some cases, people just want to, they're doing an AGM somewhere in Atlantic Canada, and they say, hey, we're doing a massive event at the Halifax Convention Centre. We should have rather than, this is the other thing, is that a lot of money gets wasted on conference gifts, as we know. Like, it is not cheap to produce a branded mug or a cap or a t-shirt. For a fraction of that price, you can buy a beautiful print magazine. And whether that magazine is Edit or Monocle or any other magazine, I encourage all conference organizers to consider print magazines for their delegates.
Let's talk about your other job as a stand-up. One thing that I'm curious, I saw that, by the way, you have a packed schedule for September, for October, for November. Does being Canadian, that must give you a lot of new material, right? I wonder, can you make fun of Canadians as well?
Yes, well, funnily enough, Canadians have the most incredible sense of humor, which I think possibly stems from the fact that everyone here, even if they've grown up in big cities, they've grown up around, rural cottage culture in some respect, sitting around the campfire, roasting each other. And so that what really blew me away when I first moved here was there isn't a sensitivity here whereby I am the outsider, I'm the fish out of water, and I came to this place and I started off quite gently, prodding, poking, and I think because they know that it comes from a place of love, I have so much free reign here. And I feel like comedians in the UK and almost certainly in America wouldn't get the same carte blanche to be able to turn up in a town and essentially, and of course it's all done with love, but essentially roast the place and point out the idiosyncrasies and the little foibles and the things that make those places special and different. But yeah, it really is a gift. Like, I was not, I worked for a stand-up comedian in England for 10 years before moving here. I was not setting the world alight. I had no angle particularly. I'm just another boring white guy walking out on stage and people are going, oh great, I bet he's got interesting things to say. and yet moving here, they say that in comedy, the dream is to be a fish out of water. And so coming here really gave me my voice. And it's like when I walk out on stage for now I'm doing kind of 100-minute shows to, could be up to 1,000 people in a theater across the country. Everyone knows what they're getting. They're getting someone that really loves this country, but isn't afraid to take the mickey out of it. It's so much fun. And juggling both jobs means that half the time I'm discovering things for the magazine while I'm on the road, but it also means that there's no sitting backstage enjoying the backstage fruit tray pre-show. I'm always sat there bashing away on my laptop writing articles and then walking out, but I wouldn't have it any other way. As a child, my dream was to be either a journalist or a comedian. I didn't know which way to go, and to end up doing both, it just makes me the happiest person in the world. And you throw a Canadian citizenship on top of that really is the icing on the cake.
That's the icing on the cake. And I wonder, we should investigate. Maybe are you the only kind of stand-up and editor, that combo? That's an unusual combo.
A very good point.
Do you know any others? I don't know.
I don't know if I have, and it's funny. I'm always looking for things to make myself, because I often joke, I live in this tiny town, so I always say I'm Ross in New Brunswick has 10,000 people in it, so I always say I'm the number one British comedian who lives on the Rossay Road in New Brunswick. I'm always looking for an angle, so perhaps that's the angle. The only, anyone listening, if there are any other magazine editors and stand-up comedians out there, let us know, because that would be what a great tour that would be to round up if there were a few of us.
Thank you very much, James. For more information on him and his gigs, go to jamesmullinger.com. And for more on Edit, go to maritimeedit.com. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Jack Dewars. If you have any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fp@monocle.com. And remember, we're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. Meanwhile, you can always listen to The Stack again at monocle.com or subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.